earlier this week I found myself at my local library looking through past issues of the Hockey News. I wanted to look for some hockey magazines, read up some things of the past, and what ended up happening was I stumbled across this one Hockey News magazine from the beginning of the 2016-17 season. It was published in 2016 around September, I believe, so you guys can get a time frame of how long ago that was. It's almost been 2 years. And in this magazine, they did the thing that they do nowadays still, wherein they look at every single NHL team and they look at the prospects and everything. But one of the things that really stood out to me was the top 10 prospects lists that the Hockey News had back then, almost 2 years ago. So we're going to be looking at each of these players right here. This is the Hockey News' top 10 Vancouver Canucks prospects back in 2016. Now, I did upload an image of this onto the Canucks subreddit, so some of you guys coming over from there may have seen that. Yeah, that was me who posted that. Hint, hint, LegoRocks99 is my user. I wanted to go over this just because it's kind of weird to see how far we've come along in terms of our prospects and just the guys that we got in our system. So over on to number 10, the 10th best Vancouver Canucks prospect is Cole Castles, age 21, playing for the Utica Comets. He's written over here as a versatile player who could fit in a penalty-killing role, and his offense dried up as a rookie pro. And it talks a little bit about when he was drafted as well. Cole Castles is a player who did have a little bit of a resurgence playing for the Comets this year, as a lot of the Comets did get a lot of injuries. Cole Castles was able to step up, but 26 points in 67 total Utica Comets games played. It's not really looking good for Cole Castles in terms of him being able to actually make the NHL in the near future. If he does, I hope he does, because I want good careers out of these guys. I just don't really know if it will happen. So that's number 10. Going over to number 9, it's somebody that's still in our system today as well, William Lockwood. Now, Lockwood, he's a player who a lot of people are just questioning, is he even going to actually be able to play? Because 2 completely unrelated shoulder injuries to the same shoulder really sidelined him back. You remember seeing him in the World Juniors, he wasn't able to play after, and then his season was cut off as well. William Lockwood has just faced the most unfortunate of circumstances, and overall, it will be great to see him progress in the way that Adam Gaudette did. Of course, he's a year behind, so he's got a little bit more time to work with as well, but at the same time, we're still hoping for the best from William Lockwood. He was listed as number 9. Going over to number 8 on the Hockey News' list, Nikita Trampkin, or Nikita Triamkin, however you want to pronounce it. Trampkin is a player who a lot of people are sort of speculating he might actually come back. Drafted in 2014 in the 3rd round, 66th overall by the Canucks, he was actually an overager, seeing that he was eligible for the 2013 draft but didn't get selected. He's playing over there in the KHL, 25 points in 51 games played. He is one of the better defensemen in the league, to be honest, and it's weird. People are speculating a comeback because it was reported that the only reason he left Vancouver in the first place was Willie Desjardins and that whole group of coaching staff and what they expected out of him. So he's been liking a lot of Canucks posts on Instagram recently, so a lot of people are starting to think maybe when his KHL contract is up, he might come back to Vancouver in some form or another. That would be great, absolutely great. I would love having a 6'7", 265-pound Russian defenseman back on our team. He was really hyped. He was fantastically hyped back when he came on, and I remember that thoroughly. It was fantastic. He's listed on here as number 8. Going over to number 7, this is a guy who I actually saw in real life. I saw him at the Five Guys down there at Vancouver City Centre near the Best Buy. Andre Pedan, who's now playing for the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins, 26 points in 50 games played for these AHL Penguins. And Andre Pedan, 24 years of age, he's also pretty big too, 214 pounds, 6'5", not Canucks property anymore. Let's move on. Going over to number 6 on this list, they have Guillaume Brisebois, the player taken in the 3rd round in 2015, the player who Trevor Linden and Jim Benning actually said they would have taken in the 2nd round had they had a pick, because they just liked him too gosh darn much. But Brisebois still playing today for the Utica Comets, 18 points, 67 games played in his first year of professional hockey. He's a guy who we really don't know how he'll pan out eventually. I hope he's able to make the NHL in some form, maybe as like a 7th D kind of top 6 kind of role, but at the same time, it's a little bit too early to count Brisebois out now. Let's move into the top 5. Number 5 on the Hockey News 2016 Best Canucks Prospects list is Jordan Subban, who is basically Nick Dowd now. I mean, playing for the Ontario Reign, 8 points in 34 games played. If you want to look at his entire AHL season of this year, he grabbed himself a whopping 13 points in a whopping 50 games played. So, yeah, totally a fantastic offensive defenseman. But all sarcasm aside, I really hope Jordan Subban is able to put it together and make the NHL one day, just as his other two brothers have. It's just that now, it's not with the Canucks. Going over to number 4, this is where things kind of start to get a little bit interesting, because the 4th best prospect in the Vancouver Canucks system, as defined by the Hockey News back then in 2016, was Brendan Gaunce. Brendan Gaunce, the read-up over here says that he must recover the edge that had him almost make the Canucks out of camp last year, meaning 2015-16. So it's kind of pointless to talk about Gaunce and what he could have been, because he's on the team right now in a bottom 6 penalty-killing kind of role. People seem to like his work ethic sometimes, but at the same time, Brendan Gaunce today is not necessarily the player that we thought we would have, especially considering the fact that he got himself 46 points in 43 games for the Erie Otters in his last season of OHL hockey. The guy who was the captain of the Belleville Bulls for 2 years after we drafted him, he was a guy that we thought would actually become fairly successful in a top 6 role. As you can see today, that's not necessarily the case. Now the top 3. The 3rd best prospect on the Hockey News top 10 prospects for the Vancouver Canucks list is Brock Boeser, who is 19 years of age at the time of this printing of the magazine. From North Dakota of the NCAA, the read-up here says, a blend of power and finesse. He shows no fear taking the puck to the net. Excellent release. Well, I think today we're kind of seeing a little bit less of that taking the puck to the net, and way more of that excellent release. Brock Boeser, fantastic player, obviously the best player on the Canucks last season, by far, and he's ranked here as number 3 in the top 10 prospects list. Going over to number 2, it's listed here that number 2 on this list is Thatcher Demko, age 20, out of Boston College. So he wasn't even playing in Utica by the time this magazine was printed. The read-up here says intelligent and driven. He has shown improvement in his positioning and tracking, which is great. Obviously, Thatcher Demko today, he got himself a first NHL start. That was a win against Columbus. That was great. But as one of the best goaltenders in the AHL, one can only hope that he will eventually soon be taking over that starter backup kind of role that is shared between Nielsen and Markstrom right now. Demko, of course, he's not in the NHL right now, but he's in the AHL. He's going to be carrying the team in the playoffs. He's ranked here as number 2. And going over to the top prospect that the Vancouver Canucks had in their system at the time of this magazine's print date, Olli Juolevi, age 18, from the London Knights in the OHL. It reads, a smart player who reads the game extremely well, poised and smooth with the puck. Which is totally accurate in regards to what we believed Olli was when he was drafted. Nowadays, Olli's playing over there for the TPS. He's developing under Coach Sami Salo. In the most recent playoff game that they got eliminated by, the TPS Turku, Olli Juolevi really stepped up. Their number 1 defenseman was injured, so Juolevi had to become that guy in the playoffs. And as a 19-year-old in this one game, the last game wherein they got eliminated, he played himself 27 minutes, had a +3 rating, 10 shots on goal, and 2 assists. So Olli Juolevi has been taking this dominance that he garnered playing for the London Knights in the OHL, and through some arduous work, mind you, was able to replicate that somewhat towards the end of his Finnish league season. Now, I'm not saying that he was like this the entire season. There were many moments where Sami Salo came out and said, yeah, he needs to get much better. He needs to get better. And Sami Salo has been one of those honest guys on the radio who's been broadcasting wide that he needs to get better. Developing under Salo is definitely a good decision for Olli Juolevi and the management over there, and it really did come off as that towards the end of the TPS season. He worked his way up to this great spot in the lineup, and as a result, he's got so much to show for it. And obviously, a lot of this is owed to Sammy Salo. Thank you, man. He's really been a great help for us over the past, like, 10, 15 years of Vancouver Canucks hockey. So that's great to see him working with Juolevi. And Juolevi, I wouldn't say he's the #1 best prospect they have. I mean, if you want to take a look at legitimate prospects, not including Boeser, we'd probably have guys like Pettersson and Dahlin up there as well. But Juolevi, I believe he really does have to make the team this year. Absolutely, no questions asked. And I might make a video about that a little bit later, but I wanted to talk a little bit more about the prospects, just to highlight, again, how far we've come. If you take a look at these top 10 prospects from 2016, 6 of them are technically Canucks property, but not on the Canucks. Okay, that's great. Thatcher Demko, Juolevi, Jean Brisebois, William Lockwood, Cole Castles, and technically Trampkin, of course. 2 of these guys are in the NHL today, Brock Boeser, Brendan Gaunce, and 2 of them are not in the system anymore, Pedan and Subban. But it's just kind of interesting to take a look at where we were in the past, because I'm sure that a lot of you guys, upon seeing this list finalized back in 2016, you'd notice a lot of these guys aren't really living up to top 10 prospects for one team potential. And the ones that aren't really that high up on this list. Brock Boeser is listed as our 3rd best prospect in this year, and he's been probably the best story we've had since Pavel Bure. Brendan Gaunce is listed as our 4th best prospect, above guys like Subban, Brisebois, Pedan, Trampkin, Lockwood, and Castles, and sure, you could give the benefit of the doubt, yeah, but none of those guys are in the NHL, but Gaunce is, that gives him the benefit of the doubt automatically. Okay, but still, Gaunce is listed as our 4th best prospect, and he's probably a bottom 6 guy. #1, he's not in the NHL yet. #2, he played 1 NHL game. #3, Brock Boeser is all the way behind these guys. So, it really just goes to show you, especially the fact that our 5th best prospect, the guy above Brisebois, Trampkin, Lockwood, and Castles, is not even a Canuck anymore. Things just get really weird. And Jordan Subban at #5 is kind of weird to me as well, just because it doesn't look like he's gonna make an NHL team soon. His AHL track record hasn't been good for an offensive defenseman, which is what he's described to be. Then if you look at Andre Pedan, he's been very come-see, come-sa over there with the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins, so I don't know what NHL future lies for him as well, especially now at 25 years of age. Nikita Trampkin, I have no idea he's going to come back. William Lockwood, I hope that he's able to find an NHL path. Jean Brisebois, it's a little bit too early to tell. Cole Castles, the clock's ticking, buddy. So really, all we can gather from this list is the top 4. Juolevi, Demko, Boeser, and Gaunce are basically the only ones that we can realistically see being on the Canucks in the immediate future. And this list would have been so much better if I used the one that was published a few weeks ago, wherein we got guys like Pettersson, Dahlin, Lind, Gadjevich, DiPietro, all making this lineup. And if you add Adam Gaudette in there as well, it's incredible just how great our prospect pool is now. If you take a look at all the young guys, we got Goldobin in there as well. Tyler Mott, if you want to add him into that mix of players. But overall, the Canucks didn't have a good prospect pool 2 years ago. I think that's kind of obvious. This list over here solidifies that point. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Plus, new dashboards, like that, gaming, and bye.